Sometimes people aren't reacting to what they see. They're reacting to what they've seen before. And that difference matters because history has a way of showing back up even when people don't recognize it or don't want to. So before we get into this story, I want you to pay attention to something. Not to just what happened, but what image people were reacting to. What history some people immediately recognized, and why one video left some people laughing, while others felt disturbed almost instantly. Because sometimes the real story isn't only the moment, it's the memory the moment touches. Welcome to Black Joy Interrupted, the channel where we investigate the stories, systems, and decisions that interrupt Black safety, dignity, trust, justice, and peace. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss Black news and patterns that others aren't reporting on. Today, we're looking at the controversy surrounding Utah influencer Reed Harris, also known online as Grillfather, after a video involving his 5-year-old adopted Black son sparked a fierce debate online. Some people saw an innocent family moment, while others saw something much harder to explain away. And somewhere inside that gap, a much bigger conversation started showing up.
Is that how we do it? This makes your skin nice and shiny.
Yeah.
If you know, you know, right?
You've seen the video, and by now you probably understand why reactions split so quickly. Some people watched that clip and saw a father joking around with his child. Nothing deeper, nothing harmful. Just Vaseline, a kid smiling, and a parent being playful for social media. But for a lot of Black viewers, the reaction landed very differently because they weren't only watching the child, they were watching the image. According to reports, Reed Harris and his wife are white family influencers from Utah who regularly post content involving their children, including their adopted Black son and daughter. So this wasn't a private family moment that accidentally ended up online. This was content. And that distinction matters because once something becomes content, people are going to interpret it. So let's pause here for a second. What bothered many Black viewers wasn't simply that Vaseline was involved. I mean, Black families use Vaseline on the regular. Black children get moisturized with it. And Black women use it for a wide variety of applications. So nobody's confused about what Vaseline is. The concern was the image being created. A white father handling a Black child's body for entertainment, while rubbing grease across the child's face, laughing, smacking at his cheeks, and sharing the moment with an audience. For some viewers, that image touched something older, something historical, and something they recognized immediately, even if other people didn't. For a lot of people, the image in that video wasn't empty. It came with history attached to it. During slavery, enslaved Black people weren't only beaten, starved, separated, and sold. They were also prepared for sale. Their bodies were treated like merchandise. Before auctions, enslaved people could be washed, greased, oiled, dressed up, and made to appear healthier than they actually were. Grease, oils, beeswax, and other substances could be used to make their skin shine, to hide wounds, to cover signs of neglect, or create the appearance of strength. The goal wasn't dignity, and it wasn't care. It was presentation. A body that looked healthier could sell for more, and a body that looked stronger could distract from suffering. And over time, that image became part of Black historical memory. So when some Black viewers saw a white man rubbing grease across a little Black boy's face for entertainment, they weren't only reacting to Vaseline. They were reacting to an image that touched history. Now, to be clear, that doesn't mean every white person holding Vaseline is recreating slavery acts. That's not the argument. Images carry meaning, and history changes how communities interpret what they see. So based on a person's position in society and their recollection of history, the video can very well feel harmless. But for others, the image didn't feel neutral at all. And this is where transracial adoption changes the responsibility. Because when white parents adopt Black children, they don't just adopt a child. They adopt responsibility, not ownership, not access, and not permission to treat that child's Blackness like a cute detail in the family brand. So what does responsibility mean in this situation? It means you should be required to learn the history connected to that child in order to fully take care of and love that child. It means learning the cultural memory that child may one day inherit. And it means understanding that a Black child doesn't stop being Black because the household is white. That child is still growing up in a world that will read their skin before it reads their heart. So love matters. Of course it does. But love without knowledge can still mishandle. Love without humility can still expose. And love without cultural awareness can turn a family joke into a harmful image. And ignorance of that culture doesn't give the adult permission to act shocked when the community connected to that child says, "That didn't land the way you thought it did." There's another piece of this that can't be ignored. This was posted for an audience. And once children become content, the question can't only be, did the parent mean harm? The question also has to be, what is the child being used to create? A laugh, a reaction, engagement, or a family's brand? Because family influencer culture already has a problem with turning children into public entertainment. Their awkward moments become clips, their emotions become content, and their personalities become the brand. And when those children are adopted across race, the responsibility gets heavier. Because now the child's Blackness can become part of the performance too. Their hair becomes content. Their skin becomes content. Their reactions become content. Their adoption story becomes content. And if the parent doesn't understand the history connected to that child's body, then the internet becomes the place where that ignorance gets displayed. Not privately corrected, but displayed. And once the criticism started, the defense followed a familiar pattern. First came the minimization. It's just Vaseline. Then came the dismissal. People are reaching. And after that came the insult. Everybody's too sensitive. But that's how these conversations usually get shut down. People strip away the race. They strip away the history. They strip away the adoption dynamic. And they strip away the child's lack of power, and then act like Black viewers invented the discomfort out of nowhere. But they didn't. They saw the image. They saw the handling. They saw the racial dynamic. And they saw how quickly people tried to protect the adult from criticism instead of asking why the image disturbed so many people in the first place. That's the part worth sitting with. Because when Black viewers explain that something has history attached to it, the response shouldn't be mockery. It should be curiosity. It should be humility. And at minimum, it should be to pause. The interruption here is historical erasure through white parenting. That's when a white parent enters a Black child's life, but doesn't carry enough historical awareness, cultural humility, or racial responsibility to protect that child's dignity. And in this story, that interruption shows up in the gap between what the parent thought he was posting and what many Black viewers immediately recognized. Because the issue wasn't Vaseline, it wasn't skincare, and it wasn't whether the child smiled in the video or not. The issue was an image with history attached to it being treated like a harmless joke, while Black concern was brushed aside as an overreaction. Now, personally, my issue with this situation isn't whether this man woke up that day intending harm, because intent isn't the only thing happening at that moment. Sometimes people mean well and still create something they don't fully understand. And that's what I think a lot of Black viewers were reacting to, because this wasn't just about moisturizing a child. We Black folks moisturize our children. So no one was offended by Vaseline. We were offended by the image, the presentation, the feeling people had when they saw a white father rubbing and slapping Vaseline across a Black child's face and turning that moment into content. Because some images carry history, whether the person creating them understands that or not. And when people from the very community connected to that child say, "Hey, something about this didn't land right," the response probably shouldn't be mockery, dismissal, or jokes about people being too sensitive. At minimum, it should probably be curiosity. What am I missing here? Because sometimes discomfort is trying to tell you something. And there's another part of this conversation that deserves attention. Family influencer culture. Because somewhere along the way, a lot of adults stopped asking, "What does this moment mean for the child?" and started asking, "What will this moment do online?" Because children aren't content. They're people. And personally, I think parents sometimes underestimate how permanent the internet really is. What feels funny at 4 or harmless at 8 may land very differently when that child becomes an adult and looks back on the situation, especially when race is part of the conversation, because the internet doesn't forget. And not everything that can be posted should be posted. Sometimes protecting a child also means protecting them from becoming the joke, the debate, or the lesson years later. And interestingly enough, during the same week this Vaseline conversation was happening, another conversation surfaced that connects to this one from a different angle. Conservative attorney, journalist, and Harvard-trained legal mind David French publicly talked about how his understanding of racism changed after adopting his daughter from Ethiopia. And what stood out wasn't simply what he learned. It was when he learned it. Because French admitted that for years, he underestimated what Black people were saying about racism, bias, and unequal treatment. He didn't fully understand it until he saw it happening to the child in his own home. And honestly, that says something. Because Black folks have been explaining these realities for generations, only to be told we're playing the race card, being victims, exaggerating, or making things up for attention. And when you sit David French's story next to the Reed Harris situation, something starts to stand out. For white parents raising Black or African children, the awareness and learning part can't begin after the child is already caught in the consequences. They need to understand race, bias, and how the world will treat that child differently before that happens. Not after backlash shows up. Not after their child becomes the thing that finally makes it make sense. That work needs to begin long before the child enters the home. Now, before we close this out, there's one more thing worth mentioning. Since all of this backlash, the original Harris family Vaseline video appears to have been removed from public view. Interesting, especially after what I came across next. While I was looking through the family's public content, I found another video where they talked about racist comments directed at their children. I'm talking about cruel and ignorant comments. The kind of comments no child should ever have to experience, even as young adults. And in that video, there was a message about people needing to teach their children to do better, so the Harris children wouldn't have to experience hate.
I recently posted this reel of my family eating dinner at one of our favorite places. The reel has gotten over 1.9 million views, and of course, the comments have blown up. You would think I'd be used to comments like this after being an adoptive family for over 6 years, but it still blows my mind that people think it's okay to think this, let alone say it. I love my family and especially love that my family is built through adoption, so this is not going to stop me from sharing the love, but please teach your children to do better for the sake of my kids.
Now listen, people absolutely should raise their children to be better humans. No child should be dehumanized, targeted for their race, or grow up hearing hateful things said about them. But while sitting here watching that video, something stood out to me. The answer can't only be, please teach your children to be better. Black parents have never had that luxury. We don't just hope people suddenly become kinder. We prepare our children regardless of what others are doing, and we prepare them to push back against the world, against unfounded and false assumptions, against disrespect, and against being treated unfairly. We prepare them for the reality that some people will already have something in their mind about them before they even open their mouth, especially Black boys, and especially educated Black girls. And for me, this is what made this feel connected to everything else. Because asking the world to do better is one thing. Preparing your child for the world as it actually is, that's something different. And that's something that's built into our DNA as Black people. So when we say it's a black thing, you wouldn't understand. This is what we mean. Adopting black children requires much more than love. And for white people who adopt black children, it's something you need to get out of your comfort zone to begin to understand. We want to hear from you. Where do you think the line is between a harmless family joke and an image that carries more history than the adult creating it understands? And when white parents raise black children, what responsibility should come before the backlash, before the confusion, and before the child becomes the lesson? Drop your thoughts down in the comments section. And if you haven't done so already, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss black news and patterns that others aren't reporting on. This is Black Joy Interrupted, where we investigate the stories, systems, and decisions that interrupt black safety, dignity, trust, justice, and peace. Until next time, we're out.